This lecture accompanies Chapter 10 of your textbook, The Basics of Psychoanalysis and Psychoanalytic Theory. Freud has been called the father of psychology, and he was the first to propose a universal theory of personality development. We'll focus on the key ideas of psychoanalytic theory, briefly discuss Freud's idea of how the mind is structured, and delve into Freud's theory of psychosexual development. Your text highlights four key ideas of psychoanalysis: psychic determinism, internal structure of the mind, psychic conflict, and mental energy. First, we have psychic determinism. This is the idea that there is no such thing as free will, and random accidents and arbitrary behavior just don't happen. It's the idea that everything that happens in a person's mind and behavior has a specific cause that can be identified. Things that look like contradictions of thoughts and behaviors can be resolved, usually by looking at the unconscious. The unconscious includes areas and processes of the mind of which a person is not aware. This brings us to the second key idea, the internal structure of the mind. According to Freud, the mind is made of separate parts that function independently and can conflict with each other. There's the conscious mind, which is the part of mental functioning that you can observe. The preconscious includes ideas that you're not currently aware of, but that can easily be brought into awareness. And as I just mentioned, the unconscious includes the areas and processes of the mind of which you are not aware. Laid across these structures of the mind, Freud has theorized three components of the self: the id, which is the irrational or emotional part of us, the ego, which is the rational part of the mind, and the superego, which is our moral self. The third key idea is that because the mind is structured as it is, there can be psychic conflict in which one part of the mind acts at cross purposes with another part of the mind. There is also what's called compromise formation, such that psychological adjustment involves compromise among the different structures of the mind and the different things the individual wants. This is the ego's main job, and the result is conscious thought and behavior. The final key idea is that of the libido. Freud bases all of his theory on the assumption that the psychological part of the mind needs energy to function, and that this energy is fixed and finite. He refers to this mental or psychic energy as the libido. Some implications not supported by research include the libido as a source and the expression of anger. Freud thought that if anger was not expressed, the energy behind the anger would build up over time. But research shows that expressing anger usually makes people more angry, not less angry. Freud sought to lay out a comprehensive theory of the development of personality. His model is known as the psychosexual model of development. According to Freud, development unfolds as a result of the movement of psychic energy. It is a stage theory of development, and each stage has a physical focus where energy is concentrated and gratification is obtained, a psychological theme related to the physical focus and the demands from the outside world, and an adult character type associated with being fixated or not resolving the psychological issues at a particular stage. The first stage of development is the oral stage, and it's characterized by a physical focus on the mouth, and during this stage only the id exists. The ego and the superego have not yet developed. The psychological theme of dependency predominates here. Everything must be provided by someone else, and so needs are either met or not met, and if they're met, basic trust will be developed. If they're not met, then basic mistrust is developed. Freud proposed two ways that this stage could go wrong. Needs are fulfilled instantly and automatically, such that the child doesn't even have to have needs because they're met so quickly. Or needs are not met. If needs are fulfilled automatically, the adult is said to develop an overly dependent character that experiences pathological passivity. Alternatively, if needs are not met at all, the adult character type is too independent. It's an individual who refuses help from anyone and isolates themselves. The next stage is the anal stage and occurs between 1.5 and 3 years of age. The psychological theme of this stage is self-control of emotions and behaviors. So following orders and managing inappropriate urges and toilet training. The ego develops during this stage, and it's at this time that the mind of the child can start to find compromises between what the child wants and what is actually possible in reality. There are 2 ways things can go wrong at this stage as well. One is if parents make unreasonable expectations which don't allow the child to figure out how to control the self and when to submit to those in authority. This results in an over-controlled adult character, someone who is obsessive, compulsive, stingy, orderly, rigid, subservient to authority, and unable to tolerate disorganization or ambiguity. On the flip side, parents who never demand control may find their child grows up to be an under-controlled adult. This is someone who is unable to do anything on time, chaotic, disorganized, and has a compulsive need to defy authority. The phallic stage occurs between ages 3 and 7. The focus is on sexual organs, and the psychological theme is gender identity and sexuality, as well as morals. It is during this stage that children figure out what it means to be a boy or a girl, and it's when the superego develops. According to Freud, that is. Freud proposed that it's during this stage that a child develops a self-image as masculine or feminine by taking on many of the same-sex parents' attitudes, values, and ways of relating to the opposite sex. And he believed the superego develops as a byproduct of this identification process. This is the stage at which the Oedipus crisis is said to unfold, which I'm sure that you're familiar with. This is the idea that the child falls in love with the opposite sex parent while also fearing and being jealous of the same sex parent. To manage this anxiety, the child resolves the crisis by identifying with the same sex parent. Freud suggested that the superego develops in males as a result of their worry over castration by their father. But because females don't experience this castration anxiety, their superego develops in a much weaker way. He pointed to the existence of female prostitutes as evidence for his theory that women have a weaker superego. None of this is supported by research, by the way. Freud did not spend much time detailing the latency stage. He proposed that between the ages of 7 and puberty, children are taking a break from development and just concentrating on mastering day-to-day developmental tasks not related to sexuality. The genital stage is the final stage in Freud's model, and unlike the other stages in which children are said to have to move through the stage, this stage is meant to be just attained. Attainment of this stage means having a mature attitude about sexuality and aspects of adulthood. The physical focus is on the genitals as the source of new life, and the psychological themes are ones of creation and enhancement of life, not limited to the idea of having children, but also intellectual, artistic, and scientific contributions. So, to sum up, personality, according to Freud, develops in a normal way as long as the psychic energy is able to move through these stages. He used the analogy of an army conquering hostile territory. The troops are the mental energy, and battles occur at developmental stages. If the battle is not swiftly resolved, troops are left at the battle sites. So in other words, some of the psychic energy can get stuck at a particular stage, and this is called fixation. And when that happens, the stage is not fully resolved, and that in turn causes abnormal adult character types to develop. So as long as the child's needs are met in an adequate, balanced way at each stage, then a healthy personality is said to develop. Freud proposed a method for helping people who are fixated at a particular stage. He devised psychoanalysis as a technique that is said to resolve personality problems by bringing unconscious conflicts to the surface so that the ego can process them and release the psychic energy that's trapped. The patient is told to engage in free association, to say whatever comes to mind. And this is believed to help make thoughts and fears explicit so that the conscious, rational mind can deal with them. The therapist can provide emotional support as the patient tries to figure out what is going on and what it all means. It's a lengthy, intensive treatment with patients attending 1-hour sessions 3 to 4 times a week. It takes years and can be very painful. Issues must be dealt with logically and emotionally, and material that is brought into the room is interpreted by the psychotherapist. Patients must be also comforted and guided through the process with a therapist with whom they have an emotional bond. There are many criticisms of Freud's theories. One is the excessive complexity and the methods that he used to come to the theory. Namely, he relied on case study methods where he focused on particular patients or focused on himself and used his own introspection and insight from himself and from his specific cases. Therefore, these theories are not based on public scientific observations, which means other scientists can't evaluate the evidence. The focus on case study and introspection also means there's a high likelihood of bias. The components of his theories often have very vague definitions. That is, his concepts, like psychic energy, are not operationalized in a way that can be measured and tested. Finally, there is pervasive sexism throughout his theories. Males are considered to be the norm. His psychosexual theory of development is really a theory of the development of males. Females are considered as aberrations or deviations from the male model. Freud thought, for instance, that females had less self-esteem, lower creativity, and as I mentioned, weaker morals than males, and must spend most of their lives coming to terms with not being male. So given all of these criticisms, why did we even discuss Freud? Well, he focused on ideas that are underemphasized or ignored elsewhere, or at least they were for many, many years. The idea that conflicting motives are a source of confusion and anxiety has been empirically validated, and it's hard to argue that sex and aggression are not powerful forces in psychological life. He was the first to emphasize the importance of childhood experiences for adult personality and behavior, and he really did try to develop a complete theory of personality.